Do you have a best friend that you've known for so long that your lives become intertwined and their family becomes like your family? This is how I feel about my longtime friend, Erika. We've shared more than a name. I've adopted her whole family. And her mother has always been supportive, calm, and a wealth of wisdom to soothe whatever the world has thrown at me. And so having the privilege of this podcast gives me the opportunity to sit down and learn more about her life and what she thinks the future holds for her and her grandchildren. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Welcome to another episode of Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Iris, you are somebody who I have known for a long time. I didn't do the math ahead of time, but I want to say it was ninth grade that I met your daughter and was first and foremost confused with why there was another Erika Washington on the roster, in class and where that would come from. And then later finding out her nickname was Erika, which I thought was even funnier because
Right.
I detested my name for so long that I was like, you did that on purpose?
Right.
Purposely as a nickname, call yourself Erika. And then I find out she has all these sisters and I'm like, how cool is that? And, then it was just like I just became family, not even just because my last name is also Washington, just because of the warmth and the love that I think, you have instilled in your children and that you have yourself. So I'm really excited to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much.
And so when I met you, I think you were working for Avondale School District. Were you there? Tell me a little bit about your career path, like when you went to college and what did you expect to be when you grew up and then ultimately what you did?
Well, when I was younger and what I expected to be when I grew up was a veterinarian or an interpreter at the UN.
Oh, wow. Any particular language?
At that time, I was studying French.
Mm-hmm.
I had started studying French in second grade, so I was going to be an interpreter at the UN. And then as life went on, I ended up starting my education at the University of Michigan, straight out of high school. And then I took a detour to motherhood. And I ended up,
as a lot of us did.
yes. So I ended up going back to community college. But that was when I think I already had three. I might have had four children. So I was always in and out of school, going to school part-time.
What
And
year
then
did you start college?
I started college in 1973.
And where did you go in at that point wanting to major in veterinary medicine, or was that when you were still thinking about the UN?
I didn't really, at that point, I was kind of undeclared because I really wanted to do the work at the UN. But of course, when you start undergrad, it's just, prerequisites and not really gearing you towards what you want to do in life. So I figure I still had time to figure out one way or the other which one I wanted to be when I started. And so after having the children and just being able to go to school part-time, I didn't end up finishing my degree. I started at 18 and a half and I didn't finish until I was 42. But because I had children, even though I wanted to get the degree and I ended up getting my degree in human resources, even though I wanted to achieve that for myself, I wanted even more to achieve that for them because I didn't want them to feel that they should be hindered even if they had a family. If they, had children before they graduated, they should still complete their education. So I ended up in human resources at Avondale School District. And I think at that time, I was 29, close to 30, because when I got married at 20, their father already had a business. So we worked in the family business. And then as I decided that it was time for me to get a job because we didn't have benefits and some other things that I felt important. So I went and got the job at Avondale School District. Originally, I started at OSHA, to correct myself. I started at OSHA in the Human Resources Department, and I had worked there not quite a year when the posting came open at Avondale School District, and I went there and I worked there for 21 years and then retired.
So why human resources?
There was a special program offered at General Motors, accelerated degree program. I don't remember how I found out about that. Maybe because I was working like in city offices and stuff part-time and it came across my desk or something. But I went to this accelerated degree program at GM, and that was the only thing that they offered that I was interested in.
Mm-hmm. And so did you like doing human resource work?
I really liked that work. And as a matter of fact, after I retired, I did some contract work in human resources. And I did that up until COVID. And then it was going to be too much work for human resources with all the monitoring and everything. And I just gave it up.
And what is it that you liked about the human resources career?
I think the thing I like the most is just meeting all the people and helping people start their careers, because sometimes that's the hardest part of employment, is just getting started. And so to me, I felt that I had a hand in them getting started. I also had a hand in a small way in diversifying the workforce, because I got to screen some of the applications and to hire a lot of the support people. So I would always make sure that if someone came in, a minority or a foreign person, that I would help them through the process so they could get a job.
So you were a part of that diversity, equity, and inclusion before it became a necessity in some of the corporate entities.
Correct. Yeah. Before it became a what do they call it? A byword or something.
Right. Yeah. Like a fad or what have you. That now it feels like it's going in the opposite direction. There were a lot of folks who were hired, I think around COVID 2020, they were purposely making these job titles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, directors or what have you, I guess because some folks felt bad about the lack of diversity in all of these marketplaces. And now it feels as though, oh, well, we've moved past that and we don't really need it. And I want to say I saw an article not too long ago, I think it was 4 or 5 different top level organizations, corporate organizations, had gotten rid of that department altogether.
Yeah, because now, of course, they're saying that there may be funds that aren't available in different areas if you have a program like that. So people are nervous to upset their business in any way. So, of course, if you're telling me that I can't have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program, I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, and how many children do you have?
I had 5 daughters. I have 4 living daughters.
Mm-hmm. And so raising all daughters,
Mm-hmm.
I could ask you, what's that like? I mean, I sort of know to a certain degree with my 3. And obviously, you know, not having boys, you don't have anything to compare it to. But what do you think the biggest struggle was in trying to raise so many girls?
I think the only problem that we kind of had is because it's girls and everybody is doing everything, just staying on top of who wanted to go where and just trying to navigate a calendar, really. I didn't really have a lot of problem with my girls. They say I put the what is it saying? Spare the rod and spoil the child, but I use the rod and they're all still spoiled. But
And then how many grandchildren do you have now?
I just to um step back a little bit,
Mhm.
my made up of over 20 years, 26 years, I think this year, he had a son.
Mhm.
And one son is a lot more difficult than raising four girls.
You think so?
Yes, it
I
was.
can imagine. I
It
don't know
was
if I would
for
have ever
that.
known. I don't know if I ever would have known what to do with a boy. So,
Yeah, they do have you just standing in the corner with a puzzled look on your face because they are just so different. And for grandchildren, I have seven.
and so, now that your children have children, do you see a difference in what parenting looks like versus what you did versus what, they're going through now? Do you think it's any more difficult or it's the same?
For my opinion, it's a lot more difficult. And if you ask me or if you ask them, parenting is way different because as a child, they like to remind me of what I didn't allow that I allow the grandchildren to do. So it's always, well, you didn't allow that when we were younger. No, because now I have more learning
Mhm.
and they are the parents. So it's just a completely different perspective. And as I said, my discipline style was something that I learned that if I were a parent now, I would never use. So a lot of things are different.
I was going to ask you, is there anything that you would do different?
Yes, for sure. Especially, I love the way they discipline their children. You know, it's not so heavy handed. The children get to have an opinion, and um, still, the structure is still there. The teaching is still there, but it's just a little lighter. And I think with everything else the way it is, like in society and in school, the children need that because the world was a lot smaller place when my children were little, and they didn't have to experience so many things, so many harsh realities. And now with the children having so many harsh realities in their surroundings, it makes a lot of difference if they have a calmer home.
And I don't think I know this. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Michigan or somewhere else?
I grew up in Gary, Indiana. I
Mhm.
came to Michigan my senior year of school.
And so in your childhood, in how your parents raised you, um, did you take from that and that's how you raised your children? Or did you do something even different from that?
I took a lot from that because I just love my mom. I think she really did a good job raising us. She was her and my dad got divorced. I think I was like second grade. So she raised me and my sister and brother.
Mhm.
And we didn't have a lot. We ended up moving out of the home we were in with my dad and ended up moving to the projects. And so um, I lived in the projects from second grade to I think ninth or 10th grade. And then my mom wasn't well and we went to live with my dad. And then I didn't get along with my dad. And then I ended up here in Michigan because my mom had moved here.
Did you know that you were poor living in the projects? Did that feel different to you? Did you feel othered at all?
Because the projects I grew up in was rather large and there were just kids where I was living when we lived with my dad. There were children on the street that we played with, but in the projects, it's just like kids everywhere. So you don't really feel that feeling because my mother taught us how to sew. So if we wanted new clothes, we had new clothes. At one point, she worked in the Salvation Army and she would bring home clothes. So we had clothes, we had food, and she was a cook. She wouldn't want me to call her a cook, but she was a really good cook. So we always had good food. And you didn't really notice. The only thing that made you notice that you were poor, if there was one thing that really stood out, is we used to have these long rolls of bologna, and you used to have to slice the bologna because I don't know why they didn't slice it at the butcher or whatever, but it wasn't sliced. And so it was never sliced evenly. So you'd have this big slab of bologna for your lunch, and you'd look around and everybody else had the lunch meat that was, but other than that, I never really felt poor.
Do you feel like as a child or a young person that you felt like your opinions mattered in the home? And I ask because you talk about now that how your children raise their children, of them having that opportunity to say a little bit more about how they feel about things. And I remember hearing a lot when I was younger, children should be seen and not heard. And was this did you have that same thought process with your children, and was it the same for you when you were a kid?
My mother wasn't home a lot, so there wasn't a lot of time to have an opinion. A lot of times she would, because we were growing up in the projects, and I think she was kind of fearful of that, she would leave a task list for us when she wasn't home. And she had strict instructions about when you could go outside and when you couldn't. And we just kind of, I did kind of follow along with that. My sister and brother were a little more rebellious, and they got in trouble a lot more than what I did. But
you were a good kid.
Yeah. That didn't fare well with my youngest daughter either, because one time I was talking to her about something, and you act like you were the best kid and you didn't get any trouble. I said, I didn't get in trouble. She said, well, I'm going to call grandma and ask her. I said, go ahead. And she called my mom, and my mom was like, well, no, she didn't get in a lot of trouble. She was so upset about that. Oh yeah, unfortunately, I was a pretty good kid. And I guess maybe that's why with my girls, I think they feel like they didn't have opinions, that I didn't leave a note because I was at home, but they tell me that, they didn't have a lot of opinions and they had to do things my way because their dad worked all the time. I was home all the time. So that could be true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But for their children, I do see them, a little more conversational, trying to help them in other ways, and have them talk to other people if they feel like their message didn't get through, because it's just, and I appreciate you saying that you saw so much love in our home, because that's what I wanted to lead with. And I see them doing the same thing.
Looking at the world as it is right now, is there anything that worries you? I'm sure there's something, but is there anything that worries you as you see your children aging and your grandchildren growing up?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the separation, I see more separation, because when I was living in the projects, I think I was third grade, and that's when integration started. So I was bused, I think 20 miles from my community school. Where we lived, we could walk to school. Mm-hmm. But they started busing us to school. And it was very intimidating. It was like I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 bus loads of children from the Black community, not all project kids, but just the surrounding community. And we rode the bus out there, and you could get in your class and you would be the only minority in your class. And that caused us to not be able to have extracurricular activities because your mom was not going to let you stay after school for basketball because they shipped us to an all-white community that was not accepting of Black people at all. So
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't stay after school. And if you did, some of the boys did play basketball. So if they stayed after school, about 20 or 30 of us would stay so they wouldn't be by themselves. And we experienced riding through the community with the windows down and people turning their hoses to the window, spraying us with water. We sometimes we wouldn't make it to the bus stop right on time because we got to the bus stop right on time, we could get home before dark. And sometimes the white bus driver didn't want to stop for us. And so I experienced that kind of separation as a child. And to see now some of my grandkids experiencing the same thing, I did feel like at one point that some things like that had improved, even though with my girls, we lived in Lake Orion, and that was predominantly white too. But they did have some Black friends at school, not many, maybe 2 or 3 per girl. My oldest daughter didn't, but the ones after her did. And some of them formed friendships, even lifelong friendships, but still, it wasn't to me as separate as it was when I was a child and as separate as it seems to be becoming now that I have grandchildren.
What age were you during the busing?
I think I was third grade because we moved to the projects in second grade, I'm pretty sure. And then third or fourth grade, I started being bused.
And so I'm assuming this was to a community that, you and your family didn't ever spend any time in. It's not that you would ever have just driven out there to go shopping or hang out with folks or anything like that. Um, how did you feel going into the school every day? Like, did the Black kids have to like huddle together to feel safe, or like what did that day to day feel like?
Day to day, you didn't get an opportunity to huddle together because you could be the only Black person in your class. And so, when you get older and you're passing classes, if you went to 4 classes, 5 classes, whatever it was back then, you're still the only Black person in your class. So, and I can't even remember at lunchtime, sometimes we have like, after lunch, we have like what we used to call a sock hop, a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could see whoever had your lunch period. And I think that's why we kind of just huddled together on the bus. What time are you riding the bus? Which bus are you on? And try to, comfort each other and just stick together then. And then, of course, when we got home, we were just all together all the time. But yeah, you could get in a lot of trouble. I got in a lot of trouble at school thinking I'm doing following the rules and getting in trouble anyway. So it's an uncomfortable feeling, and also I think a strength building kind of feeling too, because you have to do this and you have to do it alone. And so that kind of just, I don't know, it just built me up in some ways, because when my girls started school, and a lot of times they were the only Black person or something was happening and, I needed to go to the school, I already had a skill set for that, how to address that, how to talk to the principal and the teachers, when a couple of incidences when they were in school and they might have had a teacher that was prejudiced. And I'd just go talk to the principal and I'd say, my daughter has 2 classes with this teacher and she doesn't like Black people. And this is the only little Black girl at this school. So why, you knowing that person personally, why would she end up with a schedule and that's her teacher? And I need that changed.
Mm-hmm. And do you
So
feel like you were heard?
her class was changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I told him I can't, she can't do, I can leave her in one class for now, but one of them has to change right now.
Mm-hmm. Do
So
you feel like you got a good education at a school where you weren't wanted?
I did. Not all the teachers were easy to get along with, but one of the things that they did was when they picked the kids that were going to be bused, they picked the kids with the best grade point averages. So,
So only smart kids got to be bused?
yeah, from where I lived. So they probably, tag the rest of them as troublemakers. If we get the ones that are good students in their community, they should be good students for us. So yeah,
That
so
feels like the start of the prison pipeline.
yes. So my grades didn't falter. I still had good grades. And I guess when you're that young, you don't really understand how much people don't like you or maybe even hate you. You just don't really have enough knowledge to comprehend that. And so you might feel like you have to work a little harder or something, but it becomes part of you so young that you don't think twice about it. And I
And so
got kicked out of a couple of classes because, those teachers just like, I cannot put up with a Black person. That must be what, they were saying to themselves. So in that instance, there's no workaround. And because my mother never wanted us to be bused anyway, she grew
so
up in a,
was it so did you have a choice about the busing, or did your parents have a choice about the busing, or you couldn't go to the school that was that you would have been closer to?
there was no choice, not for parents.
I don't think I ever knew that. I knew a little bit about busing because obviously they did it in a lot of different places, but I never knew it as to be something that was not a choice given. I thought that parents could choose.
No, and my mother was in a group that was protesting us going, and they weren't really winning, but I remember sitting down. I might have been in sixth grade by then. I remember sitting down and telling my mom, Ma, if we do go back to the community school, it's going to be so much stuff we don't have. We had a full gymnastic set up in Glen Park. That's what it was called. I mean, the balance beam, everything you see gymnastics working on when you watch the Olympics, we had every one of those things in our gym. In the gym in the Black community, we didn't have not one of those things. We just had balls and baskets. And they had a pool. They taught, that's where I learned how to swim. You could learn how to swim, you could do all the gymnastics, of course, all the other sports that we know that are common. I mean, it was everything. And I told her, we have a book for every subject, and every year we get a new book. All these things didn't exist in the community. And even though as I'm older now, I understood what she felt that we were missing by not growing up in the community. As a younger person, I was more excited to go to school out there. With all the other things that were going on, I could see that it was a better educational environment, even at that young age.
I just think it's also interesting that you said it was probably around third grade and that, the children with a higher GPA were bused and the lower not. And I think about third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. What's a GPA to that? Like it almost just from the beginning separated folks and kept the good ones and the bad ones, or the prospect of the good ones and the bad ones, separate. And so they didn't even have an opportunity to catch up or raise their GPA by going to a school that had access to all of these amenities that the other school didn't, and then it's almost like they're set up for failure to a certain degree.
That's exactly right. Because even with my girls growing up in Lake Orion, when their father and I, when we separated, lived in Pontiac.
Pontiac sits about 31 miles north of Detroit, but has always been in its shadow. It's also referred to as the Island of Poverty, in the middle of one of the richest counties in the country, Oakland County. Pontiac's unemployment rate is more than 2 times the national average. And after years of struggle and high crime rates, change may soon be felt. In 2023, the Michigan legislature allocated $50 million to renovate old buildings and develop green spaces in the city.
My youngest daughter wanted to go to school in Pontiac. I said, well, you can go to school in Pontiac, but I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be the environment that you're used to. And if you go, you're going to have to stay a full semester.
Mm-hmm.
And when she left Lake Orion schools and went to Pontiac schools, all the things I was saying about when I was younger, the new books and all the amenities, she left all of that behind and went to Pontiac. And she kept saying, when did you say I could go back to Lake Orion? Because she said it was a fight every day. I went up there a couple of times. It seemed to be more security people than teachers. She never had a book. She might get a handout, but she didn't have any books that she could bring home. It was just a completely foreign environment to her. And that's what I was saying earlier, is that same separation that existed when I was younger. I see it even more now, because I can't even imagine what Pontiac schools are like now if my grandchildren had to go to Pontiac schools as opposed to the schools they go to.
Mm-hmm. You know, and as somebody who went to Pontiac schools for a portion of my life, you know, I can attest to, you know, the number of fights and the lack of resources. And I came to Pontiac schools coming from Catholic private school. And so the harsh reality and the difference was like, it's not even night and day. It was even more so than that. I had never seen a fight before until I went to junior high school in Pontiac. I didn't experience any of the same things. And so I didn't have a choice in the matter. And I don't know if my mother had felt like she had a choice in the matter or not. It just ended up being the way it was. And that's also how I ended up at Tech, you know, starting in the 9th grade, is because, you know, I think for myself, I desired more and tried to figure out how to navigate and do that. Now, mind you, there were some great teachers in Pontiac. I can, you know, name them all probably on one hand. And I think that we probably got a excellent English education in high school, you know, especially when I had a unique opportunity to be able to in real time compare the work we were doing in our English classes in Pontiac versus, you know, the other students in the other school districts, because, you know, Tech, Oakland Math, Science, and Technology Academy North was in Clarkston and Michigan. And, you know, it was 7 different school districts brought these children together to learn. And so, but then we all went back for other subjects outside of math and science and technology. And so when I would talk about like some of the things that we had read or what have you, you know, we had already done that. And some of these kids didn't get to some of these books and essays until like 11th or 12th grade. And so, and then they were shocked that, you know, these little poor kids from Pontiac, you know, had any sort of English education. Math, science, and not so much, but, you know, English, yes. And so it was extremely difficult, I think, for me to adjust and have to stay in that adjustment from Catholic private school to a lowly resourced public school and my high school doesn't really exist anymore, not by name, and so everything is kind of like, I'm not even sure the word of it. It just sort of, the city itself is sort of collapsed on itself in certain areas. And I think that's less to do with the people and the population and more to do with outside entities.
That's correct, because when the city went into receivership for whatever reason, I had an opportunity to talk to the mayor a few months ago, and I was telling him some ideas that I thought we could do with the closed school buildings. And I had suggested to him that, because I'm sure it's a lot of foster children in that area, that they could make it like a housing unit for children that age out of foster care. And he told me that the city does not own any of those buildings, maybe one, because I can't remember who the person was over the receivership, but he even had a for sale sign on City Hall.
Wow.
So a lot of those buildings, they're vacant. Some of them have caught on fire. And that's all part of, to me, making the value of an area less so that developers can come in and then restructure it however they want. So
yeah, because I think for a while you couldn't buy anything in Pontiac, and so to me it feels as though there is a master plan that the actual residents and the community there are just not let in on and won't be a part of the decision making.
correct.
So I want to ask you about parenting. It's one thing to, when you're raising children, to set up your rules and expectations, and you're instilling morals and values and all of that, and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to, and then punishing or correcting behavior when they're younger. Once they turn 18, they go to college, and some stay home for a while and they come back. But I'm really wondering what parenting adults looks like for you. Do you consider yourself still parenting, or do you call it something different? Because I'm in that sort of weird stage of, my oldest is 24, and then the next is 20, and then the youngest is 16, almost 17. But as they are having their own place and doing their own things, you have less say so in a lot of ways, but at the same time, they're still forming their adulthood. And so trying to navigate how to parent a baby adult, like how to do that. So I think I'm actually looking for advice here.
I think the hardest age is like 15 to 18,
Mm-hmm.
because they're too big to be little and too little to be big. Because
Mm-hmm.
they are just little forming adults. And for myself, I chose to, at that age, to kind of step back and to trust my teaching. I've been preaching, I've been disciplining, I've been telling you this, I've been fussing, I've been arguing all those years. So when you go to college, you 4 years, 8 years, you should be done and you should have a lot of information. So as a mom, I'm doing this for 15, 16 years now. And I trust myself, so I should be able to trust you. And so, for instance, when they started driving, I said, here are the keys to the car. What time do you think you should be in? If they were like 16, they say midnight. No, you have to be in by 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, the smart thing for you to do is, since your curfew is 10 o'clock, if I were you, I would be pulling into the garage at 9:55, because I'm not taking any excuses for being late. And so if you violate curfew, then the next set of car keys that you get will be to a car that you bought. So I never had to take the car keys from anybody. Then when it came time to get a phone, this is your phone. These are the rules. I think back then we even had minute plans and all that kind of stuff, but
daytime minutes.
I'm not putting a phone on punishment. I don't have time to, monitor all that. So these are the rules for the phone. And if I take the phone, I'm not taking your phone this weekend. You're on punishment for 2 weeks from your phone. I'm not doing any of that. If I take the phone, you never get the phone back. I never had to take anybody's phone. So I think part of that, to me, I say it was trusting my teaching. To them, they say I had already scared the life out of them by then anyway. So they weren't they're going to violate what I said. But either way, it worked out. And when I say I didn't have problems with them, I just really didn't. And then some of the things I turned my head. And what I mean when I say that is, they start having little boyfriends and all that. And I like you, do you like me, all that. Everybody does that. So when they start getting a little older, I would just give them a little rope. And even though they probably were doing something that they shouldn't have been doing for their age, I wanted them to figure out how much of that they should do. I have a stepdaughter too, and her and my youngest daughter are the same age. And when they were 17, 18, I'd give my daughter the car, and I'd tell them, don't take my car to Oakland County. And they would say, okay. And then one day they were probably 25 years old, and I'm sitting at home just thinking about, them growing up and everything. And I said, you know what? I bet they never took my car out of Oakland County, but I bet they drove to the border of Oakland County and Wayne County and parked my car in Oakland County and got out and walked across the street to Wayne County and went out with their friends. So, I just, because one day they're going to be just out in the world, and you don't want them to be out in the world just naked. They don't know anything. They don't know how to maneuver around. They only know how to go within a 10-mile radius of home. I didn't want that for my girls. So it takes a lot of wisdom, I think, because no matter how smart they are, you're always smarter than them. So they can really outsmart you.
So it sounds like you're not a micromanager.
No. With 4 girls, I just didn't see how I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't see how I could do it because this one plays basketball. This one wants to go to all the wrestling meets. This one is a cheerleader, So in all those competitions and all that stuff, you can't be everywhere with them. You never can.
And so now that some of them are married and, having careers and what have you, what does parenting look like at that stage?
Parenting at that age is more of a friendship, I think. It's not really like I know more, because in some areas they actually know more than me now. And, when they were babies, that's when they had the computer where you had to know programming in order to use the computer. And I had programmed the computer for them because I was working in the home business, and I programmed the computer for them so that every time they hit the keyboard, it would play some music. So I did that to distract them so I could work. But now, of course, when it comes to technology, it's like, can you tell me how to do this, or how do I do that? Or even when you were first able to do text messages on the phone, I was like, I don't want that phone. Like, Mom, you got to get that phone. You got to learn how to text message, So, and then in their fields of employment, sometimes they call me and we're talking, because I think the most important thing for me with them now is just to constantly be able to communicate with them. If I talk to them every day, that's fine. I love that. If I don't get to talk to them, in a couple of days, we're going to call, we're going to text, email, or something. But generally, I talk to them every day. And so just communicating with them. There's so many levels of things now that they know that I don't know. So it's not like when they're younger, I'm the mom, I'm feeding you information that you're going to need as you go out into the world. It's not like that anymore. Now it's more, we just exchange information.
And so, thinking about exchange of information, do you talk to your kids about politics and like elections and what's going on? Do y'all discuss any of those things?
We talk about everything. We talk about um, elections. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talk about promotions and how to get promotions. We talk about mental health. Um, Sometimes we even end up talking about like sustainability because, the younger children, they get into so much about what's going to happen to the earth, especially my grandson. I have 7 grandkids. I had all girls, and we had all girls until the last one, and he's a boy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's really concerned about the environment and a lot of things. So we talk.
What is he most concerned with the environment?
He is concerned about global warming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's 12 years old, and he has he drew this picture one time, and what did he call that picture? Mass destruction or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's very conscious of like Earth matters.
And
And
so, does it make you think about it anymore, or is that something, the environment, is that something that has been on your mind or has ever been on your mind?
my mom used to talk about the environment all the time. And where we lived in the projects, it was right across from this company called the Bud Plant. And I don't know if it's like once a week or something, there was this smoky film that would come right towards the projects from the plant. And it would cover your like car windows in your car. And if it was really like a cloudy day anyway, where the clouds were low, then we didn't really play outside that much, especially on my street. We didn't play on my street a lot anyway, but um, you definitely didn't play on it that day when the pollution was so heavy in the air. So,
And you
am I
said this is called the Bud Plant?
BUDD? But
Uh-huh.
yeah,
What did they manufacture?
who knew what they manufactured? And and my mom used to always say that we were going to run out of clean water, and she used to save bottles of water. I remember when we moved out of the projects, she probably had 50-gallon jugs of water, maybe more than that. So it was always like in my subconscious. And then of course, um, I still drink tap water. And tap water used to not taste like anything. And now if I drink tap water for too long, if I don't know, it feels like it's not like digesting correctly. So I will switch and drink spring water. But now they're saying that that water has plastics in it. So
The spring water.
any bottled water.
Mm-hmm. And then there's all I've heard, of the concern of bottled water, if it's, in heat too long, or if the water freezes inside, that is seeping chemicals into the water. I don't know how true it is, or, if there are even ways to be able to test your water. I mean, there's obviously ways to test water with a chemical plant, but as you have your bottled water, it would be great to be able to just dip something in there and test it to see, if it's healthy to drink or not. But I mean, it might just put us all even more so on edge, I guess.
Yeah. So I always said, my uncle used to say if he dropped something on the ground, he picked it up and eat it. He always said you have to eat a peck of dirt before you die anyway. So I think
I'm sure we've eaten a lot of dirt.
yes. I think now dirt, plastic, chemicals, how much do we ingest? We have no idea.
Are there any issues that keep you up at night?
Not really. I mean, there are always things that you hope will be better. You think will change, but not really keep me up at night because I feel like there's only so much in my circle of influence, and I try to impact that as much as possible. And even though I feel like my circle is smaller and smaller, I still try to influence as much as I can. If nothing else, just to learn how to have a peaceful day and try to keep your mental health um, as contained as possible. Don't reach so far and wonder how you can get this person to do something, or why doesn't this work, or what am I going to do next. Just kind of pull the reins a little bit and get to the point to where, well, I had a good day today, because that's all you can really hope for, in my opinion. There are things you can do to hope to, like, for instance, for college for my grandkids. I try to hope that we're able to send everyone to college that wants to go to college, and the funds are there for that, and we're able to support them as they go to college. But as far as reaching out, I just don't feel like me losing sleep is going to help anything, I guess.
Have you always been that way, or is that something that comes with age?
I think I've kind of always been that way. Like, what can I influence? What plan do I have for my family? And then, but when I was younger, I thought I was a business of some kind. So I always had like a 5-year plan. And I guess maybe raising 4 kids is a business. So I always had like a 5-year plan. Now I try to plan for a week, but I usually am just concerned about what I'm doing that day. So I think kind of with age, I did draw back a lot because I was kind of intense. Everybody went to college at least 4 years, and 3 of the girls has a master's degree. 3 of the girls have a master's degree. So I feel that I accomplished that. And so now I hope for the same thing for the grandkids, and I try to help them as much as I can so that can happen. Because my mom was always concerned about us as a family and each generation. And so I'm hoping that at some point, that's a hard thing to do in a Black family because we just don't have resources. But I'm hoping to at least try to have some kind of generational educational wealth if we don't get to financial wealth. And so my oldest granddaughter is in her second year of medical school. So we're all really proud of that.
Do you think that at your age now, well, actually, let me back up and ask, if you don't mind me asking, how old you are.
68. I'll be 69 in May.
Okay. And when did you retire? How long ago?
55.
At 55? And were you ready to retire at 55?
Yes. One of my friends asked me that today. I never wanted to work.
Yeah, because there's some folks who say, they have an age they want to retire at, and then others say, they work until their last breath. And so, you retiring at 55, so that, gives you, what are we at? Almost 14 years, somewhere around there, of being retired. Um, you know, Looking at the workforce now, Do you feel like that's something that if you go back to when you started working, I'm trying to figure out how to frame this question, so this is sounding a little sloppy, but do you feel like you'd be in the same place you were when you started working as to where the way the work environment looks now? Do you feel as though it would be easier to start your career over in the 2020 era versus when you started?
So are you asking me if I were 20 now and going into the workforce? Do I think it was way easier back then?
You think it's easier
It's way easier
than now?
When I finished high school at 18 years old, I got a job at the Social Security Administration. And if I had worked at the Social Security Administration and not gone to college, I probably would have made 2 to 3 times what I was making when I retired, starting work at 30 and working till 55.
Because of government pension plans, or?
Because of government pension plans, because of the easy entry. Access was so easy that I only had a high school diploma. And so now, when I was doing the contract and I had been looking for part-time jobs, and the qualifications that they want you to have and the amount of work they want you to do for the pay that's tied to that, to me, is just too inequitable. Even when I stopped working, the salary that I was making, the person that had the job before me was making $20,000-$30,000 more than they offered me to do the job. And I think when I was younger, it was a fair wage for the work you did. Now I think everything is just distorted.
And so when I was talking to Skylar about this and her being 20, one of the things that she said is that one of her concerns is that she's following the rules of, graduating from high school, and getting good grades, getting scholarships, going to college and doing well, and, going to graduate from college, but feeling like when she gets into the workforce at the rate of the way things are going now, housing costs and the such, that she's not going to be able to afford. So she feels as though, she's getting like the raw end of the deal. And she's like, she feels as though the bargain is not being held up. They're saying, do all of these things and you will be successful and you will be able to have your own stuff. And so her concern is, what if I have to move back home? And I asked her, do you think of that as a failure? And she says, yes and no at the same time, because it's not a failure on her part. It's a failure on the bigger part, whether that's society or our government. Do you feel like your grandchildren are going to be able to follow in their parents' footsteps and yours, and graduating from college and being able to get a well-paying job that they will be able to start their life off well?
And that's always something that I think about, like just when I'm watching the news and everything. It's like when I started working, I found one of my old check stubs. I think I was making $2.50 an hour or something when I was at the Social Security office. And so then when I retired, I don't know, making 20-something dollars an hour. It feels like the same $2.50. Back then I could if I didn't like working at the Social Security office, I could have quit that job and went to any job and got hired. The economy was just so open that you could go anywhere and get a job. And I feel exactly like what Skylar said. What they're getting for the money they're paying, they're not getting their money's worth. And I don't know at what point that will happen again, that they're able to get their money's worth.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington, with music, mixing, and editing by Black Gypsy LLC. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy.